Imagine trying to solve a Sudoku puzzle, but instead of using logic and numbers, you have to use the laws of thermodynamics. Sounds completely unhinged, right? But what if forcing two totally unrelated fields to collide like that is exactly what we need to solve the oldest, most profound mystery in pure math? Welcome to a deep dive into the Curvature Variable Physics Framework, or CVP. Today, we are looking at how engineers are using next-gen 6G telecom to decode the hidden architecture of prime numbers. If you love massive aha moments born from absolute chaos, this deep dive is custom built for you.
Yeah, it really is. It's a wild connection. To understand how we jump from, your next-gen internet to prime numbers, we really have to look at the creator of CVP, Timothy J. Dillon. He originally built this framework to route data in bio-nano networks.
Oh, wow. So literally biological data networks.
Exactly, yeah. He used this concept called toroidal-refractance, which is basically, it's a way to bend light and data signals around obstacles so they do not crash into each other.
Right, so bending data to keep traffic flowing perfectly. But, how on earth does that translate to pure math? Prime numbers aren't internet routers.
Well, that is the genius part of it. CVP takes that exact physics, the stuff used to prevent data traffic jams, and applies it to the number line. In this system, prime numbers act like really heavy data signals.
Like giant files just clogging up the network?
Pretty much. And because primes appear so unpredictably, they create this mathematical tension. The framework calls it arithmetic compression. So to keep the system from just, crashing, you need a counterforce to balance that tension.
And let me guess, that counterforce comes from the Riemann zeta zeros.
You got it. The zeros act as the refractance geometries. They're basically the mathematical lenses bending that tension back into harmony.
It is almost sort of like a symphony, You can think of the prime numbers as these brutal, unpredictable percussive strikes, and then the zeta zeros are the exact resonant acoustic frequencies you need to absorb all that tension.
That is a really great way to look at it, yeah. Because without them, the music just devolves into pure noise. And the famous critical line, that axis where complex math says all these zeros should theoretically live, is the one unique equilibrium axis, where those acoustics are completely flawless.
Wait, so if that acoustic balance is so crucial, what happens if a zero, drifts off that perfect equilibrium axis? Does the whole thing just break?
Basically, yes. CVP puts that drifting zero on trial in what it calls an admissibility court.
Yeah.
If a zero drifts off the line, it mathematically fractures. It forms this unstable four-point rectangle.
An unstable rectangle. So the math cannot just sit there in that state, right? How does the system resolve that breaking point?
It breaks violently, actually. The fracture triggers a rigidity cascade across three specific defect channels. The first one is curvature, where the actual geometry of the math distorts.
Okay, geometry distorts. What is the second channel?
The second is persistence. This asks, if you zoom way in or way out, does the error disappear? And in this case, no. It stubbornly survives across all infinite scales. And the third is symmetry, where the fundamental balance of the equation just totally collapses.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you here. If this framework writes its own rules for what is stable or unstable, isn't it just rigging the game? Couldn't they just define stability in a way that forces the Riemann hypothesis to be true?
Oh, absolutely. That is a massive vulnerability, and it is the exact one the framework anticipates. To prevent that kind of circular logic, CVP establishes an admissibility constitution.
A constitution for math? That is wild.
It really is. It is a strict set of axioms that forces the model to rely entirely on established classical math. So, for a zero to fail in this court, its defect has to violate a classical limit.
Like proving a sequence diverges when centuries of traditional math prove it absolutely has to converge.
Exactly. It cannot just break CVP's own rules. It literally has to break math itself.
So to show how those foundational rules are broken, CVP maps the errors onto a thermodynamic model, right? They call it a catastrophe surface.
Yes, they take that mathematical error and model it as physical stress energy. As you move up the logarithmic scale, meaning as the numbers get astronomically larger, this stress energy builds up.
And that pushes the entire mathematical system up a topological feature called a violation ridge.
Right, until eventually the tension is just way too high and the system is forced over a catastrophic fold.
Which drops it straight into a rigidity blow-up wall. Basically a mathematical contradiction. So it literally visualizes flawed, complex analysis breaking down as if it were a space-time singularity.
Precisely. It is not physically tearing the universe apart, obviously, but the mathematical model behaves exactly like a physical blow-up. It uses thermodynamic geometry to prove that an offline zero simply cannot exist without creating a fatal contradiction.
Man, the way CVP bridges telecom engineering, thermodynamics, and pure math is just staggering. But what I find really brilliant is how it manages its own psychology. It has all these incredibly poetic concepts.
Right? Like the terms from the source, such as harmonic silence and the closure symbol omega 88.
Yes, exactly. But CVP strictly quarantines all of that into a completely isolated visionary layer, so it does not mess with the actual hard logic.
It is a phenomenal structural move. You keep the visionary inspiration and the formal, rigorous logic in the exact same building, but you put them on completely separate floors with no stairs between them.
It prevents the hard math from being contaminated by the temptation of a beautiful metaphor, which leaves you, the listener, with something highly practical to ponder for yourself.
Oh, definitely.
We all face massive, seemingly unsolvable bottlenecks in our own professional and creative lives. Could CVP's strict architectural separation of visionary metaphors from formal logic be the ultimate blueprint for breaking through them? Sometimes, to finally crack that impossible Sudoku puzzle, you really do need the wild inspiration of thermodynamics. You just have to know exactly where to draw the line between the dream and the data.